وصلاة ربي وسلامه ورحمته وبركاته على ذاك النبي الكريم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We continue at 4:25 p.m. Sunday, October the 21st, 2018 of the Hijrah, of the Gregorian calendar, which agrees with Safar, the month of Safar, which is the 10th, Aam 1440, the 10th of Safar, which is the year of 1440 after the migration of the Prophet ﷺ. And don't worry, brothers and sisters, maybe if we have a health class, we'll do that. Health class is real important. طيب. Well, as far as pertaining to Buloogh Al-Maraam by the great illustrious Imam Al-Hafiz Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani, rahimahullah, who died 852 after the Hijrah of Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam. And we continue in the chapter of his treatise. It's considered from the books of fiqh that a student of knowledge, or a mubtadi', not a mubtadi', a mubtadi' means a beginner. Not a mubtadi' is an innovator, with an ayn. But those who begin in fiqh in the aspect of jurisprudence, you'll find that those who reach the level of being a scholar from the religion start with the likes of these books of Buloogh Al-Maraam, especially if he wants to specialize in the field of fiqh, of jurisprudence, and having ma'rifah or knowledge of the al-ahkam, of the rulings regards to the affairs that are subsidiary or the branches of the religion in fiqh, which is also very important in the life of the Muslim, that he has to have some type of knowledge of fiqh, especially after he's learned his aqeedah, learned his belief system properly, and acquired the knowledge of tawheed and shirk and sunnah and bid'ah. Then he learns some of the affairs of jurisprudence, so he can correct his worship of Allah Ta'ala in a proper manner. So we talked about Kitab al-Nikah. We've been covering this book for a period of time now, and we now have, alhamdulillah, finalized majority of the chapter, which we wind down when concluding the chapter with a couple of ahadith and chapters that are left. We'll be taught about that the great Imam Al-Hafiz Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani rahimahullah, that he put the title of the chapter Bab Ishrat Al-Nisa, the chapter of living with the women in kindness and good treatment of them, the Ishrat Al-Nisa. We said the Ishra or Mu'ashara means to live with them or coexist with them in kindness. So the great Imam Al-Hafiz, that he, like we said, opened the chapter, or he inaugurated this chapter by putting these narrations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in it. And from the narrations that he put in the chapter first was the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, قال, that we said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the one who's cursed, who is intimate with a woman in her anus. رواه أبو داود والنسائي واللفظ له ورجاله ثقات لكن أعل بالإرسال. It says that this narration has been informed Abu Dawood and Nasa'i, وَاللَّفْظُ لَهُ. If I knew this was a Nasa'i, I would have went back to the Sharh. But anyway, وَرِجَالُهُ ثِقَاتٍ. And also the people who are the narrators are all trustworthy and reliable. They said the hadith has a hidden weakness of irsal. Irsal. And we know that the meaning of irsal, or that the meaning of it is that the sahabi, meaning the actual companion in the chain, is not known. Meaning he was dropped from out the chain. The affairs of what they call irsal, or the hadith being mursal, is a hadith that is weak. It's a hadith that's weak. However, the weakness is not severe. It's a light weakness. And in certain cases, the hadith can even be authentic even though the hadith is mursal. A person would say how? Because if the Sahabi, as we know from the i'tiqad or the belief of Ahl Sunnah, is that we believe that all the companions are all udul. All of them are upright and reliable. And all of them are trustworthy in their narrations. All of them. Without any exception. So if it's known in the isnad or the chain that a sahabi or companion was dropped, then the hadith still is authentic. If it's been established that the one who's been dropped out of the chain was a sahabi, then the chain is still considered authentic. So it is not a illa qadiha. It's not a hidden weakness that affects the authenticity of the hadith if it's known and it's been established and it's been affirmed that a companion has been dropped out of the chain. Because like we said, from the i'tiqad, the belief of Ahl Sunnah is that we believe that all the companions of the Prophet ﷺ are all udul. Udul meaning that they are upright, they are all trustworthy in their narrations, because Allah says in the Quran about them, He is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. So based upon that matter or that reality, that all of the Sahaba are trustworthy and reliable in their narrations. You never find that there was a Sahabi for the Prophet ﷺ who lied upon him, that lied upon the message of Allah. All of the companions are trustworthy and reliable. So this illah, as you find in your books, everyone looks in it, it's not a hidden weakness that affects the isnad. And you'll find, like we said, from the great ai from the great scholars of this religion, who authenticated the hadith of contemporary days, is the great imam, the imam of the muhaddithin, the people of hadith of these days, the great imam Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani rahimahullah, rahmatu wasi'a wa jazahullahu anna wa anil muslimin khayrul jaza. The great imam, illustrious imam al-Hafiz, imam al-Muhaddith, Faqih, Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani mentioned these narrations in his book called Silsila al-Ahadith al-Sahiha, the chain of authentic ahadith, of narrations authentically reported upon the Prophet ﷺ. And he said that these narrations are all authentic. They're authentic. So one should not say or deny to say, oh, this narration of being intimate with a woman and her anus is not authentic. You see, it says it's weak, it's a weakness. We said no. The great Imam has authenticated it, and other Imma from them, from our contemporary scholars likewise, is the great Imam, the Sheikh bin Baz, likewise. And likewise, the Imam Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen, and likewise, the Imam Salih Fawzan ibn Abdullah al-Fawzan, and likewise, a Sheikh, likewise, al-Imam, we could say he's Imam, inshallah, Sheikh Abdullah ibn Abdurrahim al-Bukhari, has even a whole book on it. He has a book that he authored in this particular matter. And he said that there's no argument for those who try to use and say that these hadith are weak or they're rejected. He said all of them have been affirmed and authentically reported upon the Prophet ﷺ, and no one should try to now come, because they're probably more than likely a person that wants to say that they're all weak or a person of desires. Oh, it's still coming. It's still coming, Amir. They said it's still coming. So these narrations are all authentic. So we said that this, you'll find that the great Imam Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar, that he opened the chapter up with this what? With this hadith. Because that is from, he said 4 minutes away. He said that is from good dealings with the women. Why? Because it defeats the purpose of marriage. Because we know the ayah, Allah Ta'ala says in His book, that your women are a harvest for you. So go to your harvest how you will. Meaning Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 223. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, that He says that your women are a harvest for you. Meaning that you come to them and be intimate with them in a manner in which Allah Ta'ala has commanded. And that place where that harvest the meaning of harvest here meaning having children. So Allah Ta'ala used the word harvest, meaning of what you will bring forth of crops, which is to in actuality mean what? What would be a reason of bringing offspring and children. And we know that will only come from if a man is intimate with a woman in what they call her qubul, meaning in her private part. It will bear, inshallah, offspring and children. And Allah Ta'ala has allowed one to be intimate in that manner from any direction he wants. And we're just being, like we said, we're not trying to speak in a manner where we're trying to be desirous or funny. Rather, this is serious. Rather, we're taking it seriously, and this is a manner in which we discuss, and also lets us know the beauty of Islam. So it's permissible for a man to be intimate with his spouse in any direction he wants, as long as it's in the qubul, and her qubul. It's in the private part where it bears children, or it will bring offspring, which is the woman's vagina. That is what will bring children, and that is permissible for the man to be intimate in the direction that he wants. There's nothing wrong with that. So we say, Ya ma'ash al-ikhwa wal-akhawat, that this is an affair in which Allah Ta'ala has said in His book Himself of what is permissible. So as long as Allah Himself has said it, then no one can now say, no, you cannot do that. Rather, we say Allah Himself has said it is permissible to be intimate with a woman, as long as it's, like we said, in the vagina or the qubul, in the vagina. Oh, that's it? Okay, jazakallah khair. Okay. You're not hungry, are you? You okay? Hamzah? All right. طيب. So we said, for number one, the reason why this affair is impermissible, number one of why it's permissible, why it's impermissible, meaning the dubur, not the qubul, the dubur. Number one, it's not a place of harvest. It's not a place of harvest, meaning it's not a place where children, where offspring will take place. As we know, and this is established and agreed upon every human being, even homosexuals and even people who practice that, know for certain that a man cannot be intimate with another man in his anus and he will bring children. Or likewise, a woman for intimacy with another woman is also something that's even more further away of children will come as a result of that type of intimacy. So, the only thing in which is established that no one can disagree, that the only way that children will be born if intimacy between two couples take place in their privacy is that which is done, or intimacy that was done in the vagina, and that's it. That is what's going to bring more likely children. Any other place, like we said, meaning especially what is mentioned in the hadith here, then we know likewise, in which was mentioned in the narration of the Prophet ﷺ, that it's impermissible. But as far as fondling and other things, we know in other authentic narrations that is also permissible. For men also likewise can fondle and he can touch other places in which we have already established in the month of Ramadan, and those authentic narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, what he would do with Aisha. طيب. So number one of why this matter is impermissible, we said, is because it's not a place of harvest. It's not a place where it will bear offspring and children. So that's number one. Number two, we said, I don't know if we covered this last week, but we'll mention it now, that it's a mawdi'ul qadurat. That's a place of impurities. It's a place of impurities. In a place of usakh, of dirt and things which are bacterial and which will cause harm. And we know that Islam came in order for what? To maintain one's purification and hygiene and cleanliness. That's the reason why you'll find that Allah Ta'ala in so many ayat had prohibited and gave the story of Lut. Well, Lut, as we know, was in the family of Ibrahim, Khalil Rahman. And we know that the angels that passed by Lut also passed by Ibrahim in the story. If you look in your book, in the Quran, that the same angels that visited Ibrahim had also visited Lut. They're the same angels. And we know the impermissibility of what happened in the story of what happened with Lut, as we talked about, we touched on briefly last week. The story of what happened with Lut and the people of Sodom. The people of Sodom, meaning Sodom. And the prohibition of what they were practicing, in which Allah Ta'ala had mentioned in so many ayat, more than what can be accounted. And inshallah, I'll give probably 2 series of khutbahs on this when I had the time. Because I have actually seen that there are Muslims that are practicing this, and I can't believe it. It's been presented to me from a couple of people. Muslim women marrying other Muslim women, and I'm trying to figure out how you think that marriage, how in the world do you think your marriage is valid? How do you think that and a Muslim man married another Muslim man? And I'm thinking to myself, if a person truly learned the Aqidah, how in the world do you think in your mind you think your marriage is valid? How can you think your marriage is valid? And you'll even find from the A'imma of these days, Fadilat al-Alama, Fadilat al-Walid, Ubayd ibn Abdullah ibn Sulaiman al-Jabiri. When I even spoke to him about this, he sent out, even it was sent to as a benefit in the text, that he mentioned, it said that a person that marries another man of the same gender or same gender marriages, he said this is very dangerous to the point where a person will have to be careful of him falling into kufr, of nullifying his Islam. Why? Because now when you reach the level, let's just say, he said, for example, if a person does it in secret, he still believes that what he's doing is what? Wrong. So what he thinks he knows what he's doing is wrong. Not to say what he's doing is also a major sin. In secret, what he's doing in secret, no doubt, he has to still make tawbah. But he said now when you took it up another level is when you married another person. So now you're trying to legitimize it and make it halal. So now when you're trying to legitimize it and justify it and make it halal, you are now in danger of nullifying your Islam if you haven't nullified your Islam. So the fact that now you come up with marriages, you're now starting to what? Say it's legal. And it's halal. So now you reached another level where that person's Islam is in danger of being nullified if it has not been nullified. So this affair of marriages, of same gender marriages, what they call in the Arabic language, zawajul amthal. That's what they call it, homosexual marriages. They call it zawajul amthal, marriage of the same gender, which is rejected and is invalid. And we know the ayat Allah Ta'ala says in his book about the people of Lut, in Surah Al-Hijr. He says, لَعَمْرُكَ إِنَّهُمْ لَفِي سَكْرَتِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ فَأَخَذَتْهُمُ الصَّيْحَةُ مُشْرِقِينَ فَجَعَلْنَا عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْمُتَوَسِّمِينَ وَإِنَّهَا لَبِسَبِيلٍ مُقِيمٍ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ Surah Al-Hijr. Listen to this one ayah and I'll suffice and then we'll go back to the class. So as we know, the people of Lut, that the men in his village were practicing this. There were people who were men being intimate with each other in the anus. And this was something that was what? Something that was unprecedented, in which shaitan came and decorated. So Allah Ta'ala says in his book, لَعَمْرُكَ, and Allah swore by the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And we know Allah can swear by anything of the creation of what he wills. But it's not permissible for us to swear by the creation, but Allah can swear by the creation because he's the one that owns it. So Allah says, لَعَمْرُكَ. He said, verily they were in their intoxication, going deeper in it. Meaning, how they were so in a state of misguidance, where shaitan decorated this act to the point where they started to enjoy it. Until Allah described it as being in a state of intoxication. Until Allah Ta'ala says in his book, فَأَخَذَتْهُمُ السَّيْحَةُ مُشْرِقِينَ. He says that a loud cry screamed out when they came upon the morning. And when Allah Ta'ala says, we made the highest part of the village the lowest part. What does that mean? As we discussed last week, we said in the narrations in the tafsir that Jibreel took the village and he raised it to the highest heaven. They said until the inhabitants of the heavens heard the screams and they heard the noise of some of the animals. And then it was turned upside down and it was collapsed upon them. And then Allah says in the same ayah, and then we made it rain upon them, the rocks from Sijil. And like I said, from the what we translate it as, for lack of better words, is of what they say, brimstone. But we'll say that as what? There was hot coals of clay, which was rained down likewise upon them. Then Allah Ta'ala says in His book, verily in that is a sign for the mutawassimin. For the mutawassimin. Who are the mutawassimin? The people who have firasa. We know there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the majority of Ahl Ilm says da'if. He said it's weak. But there's another narration that supports this meaning. But what the weak one is, he says, ittaqu firasat al-mu'min. فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. Be on guard against the senses of a believer. For verily he looks by the light of Allah. What is the word firasa? What's firasa? Firasa is like a sense that a person has based upon certain movements and signs. Not because he knows the unseen, but based upon certain movements and certain signs and experience. Allah Ta'ala can give certain people what they call firasa. It's like a sense, but it's like an insight. Like based upon the fact that you can tell sometimes when a person is lying when you say a statement and they do a certain reaction. And it looks suspicious. And but you know in the back of your mind that's an indication of something. But so by certain actions and certain movements and certain behavior and certain conduct, it gives you signs to what? To give you a certain sense about certain things. You understand what I'm saying, everyone? So it's a difference between firasa and difference between ilm al-ghayb. It's a difference between having firasa, meaning that sense of insight of certain affairs, and having knowledge of the unseen. The knowledge of the unseen, no one can claim that except Allah. But firasa is something that is established. Why? There's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, that this hadith, Imam al-Albani said is Hasan. He said, Inna lillahi ibadan ya'rifuna an-nas bit-tawassum. He said, verily belongs to Allah servants. He said that they know people by their tawassum. They know people by their signs. Meaning by certain conduct, certain movements, certain behavior, experience. They have insight. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? So that's permissible to have firasa. That Allah gives someone based upon, like we said, how many of us know, based upon some of our children and certain people we've dealt with, you'll say a certain statement to try to corner them, and they'll make they'll raise their eyes or they'll make a certain movement, which is an indication of something. You understand what I'm saying, everyone? So we say that firasa is permissible. But the point of this ayah, if we mentioned in here, what I've just said about the people of Lut, it was talking about these type of people of firasa. Because notice Allah says in His book, verily in that is a sign for the mutawassimin. For the mutawassimin, those who have insight and those who have firasa. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah Al-Hijr, He said, verily the village that was turned upside down and rained upon it, that hot clay, or like we said, for lack of better words, brimstone, verily in that village, it is most definitely been established and most definitely still apparent for everyone to see. And I think everyone knows what they're talking about. Allah made it a sign to this point where they still say to this day, the Dead Sea was where the village of Lut were destroyed. The Dead Sea. And Allah knows best if that's truly it, but the signs are there because Allah did say in His book, He said, verily, most definitely, we made it as a path established for everyone to see it. And they say that the Dead Sea, nothing can live in it because it's too what? It's too salty. It's as if something tremendous took place, something devastating, something catastrophic took place. And they said that no one can live in it. Nothing can live in it. Then Allah Ta'ala said it again, verily in that is a sign for the mu'mineen. Verily in that is a sign for the mu'mineen. And inshaAllah bi'idhnillah, it's so many ayat talking about this, in which we don't have time to totally go into details. But it's definitely an interesting topic, which was given an author in a treatise, beneficial treatise, entitled Them al-Liwat. Them al-Liwat. Them, meaning this praiseworthy and the impermissibility of homosexuality, by the great Imam Abu Bakr al-Ajurri, the one who we had the book, we gave the lecture here in this masjid, a book called Kitab al-Sharia. That same author of that book wrote this book. His name was Abu Bakr al-Ajurri. He was from the great scholars of the Aqidah Salafiyah. Abu Bakr al-Ajurri, rahimahullah, Sahib Kitab al-Sharia. And he has a whole book on it. And it was translated. This book called Dhamm al-Liwat was translated by our brother, our virtuous brother, Mustafa George. Mustafa George translated this. And I think it's been translated. Some of the people have copies in the Dawah Center. Some of them have it in their homes. But this whole book has been translated. Like I said, our brother, Mustafa George, hafidhullah. But at any rate, getting back to the book, everyone, if you go to the next narration on the authority Ibn Abbas, radiyallahu anhuma, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا ينظر الله إلى رجل أتى رجلا أو امرأة في دبرها. رواه النسائي والترمذي وابن حبان وأعل بالوقف. The second hadith talks about, likewise, putting emphasis on the previous one, that Allah will not look to a man that was intimate with another man. That Allah will not look to a man who was intimate with another man, meaning he practiced homosexuality. And also we know that's more all befitting and all the more reason is lesbianism also falls into this. That's what they call musahaqa or sihaq, lesbianism. Also likewise that we know that is the same hukum, it's the same ruling. Nor would Allah look to a man that was intimate with a woman in her anus. So it says, لا ينظر الله إلى رجل أتى رجلا أو امرأة في دبرها. رواه النسائي. And I have to go back to what Muhammad bin Adam al-Ethiopi. I'll do that later. So this hadith is also talking about al-liwat. It's talking about, likewise again, homosexuality. So these are the narrations that what? Confirms it. You'll find that there are narrations upon the Sahaba, upon the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Where would I do it? Excuse me, everyone. Where's the narrations? As we know, the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, and also likewise we have the understanding of the Sahaba. As has been authentically reported upon Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, أنه قيل له وكتب إليه في رجل وجد في بعض ضواحي العرب ينكح كما تنكح المرأة. There's a narration on authority of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq when he was the Khalifa. It was said to him that it was written to him a letter. There was a man that was found doing this in some of the outskirts or the suburbs or the outskirts of the Arab, in the Dawahi. They said that he would be intimate just as in a manner in which a woman would be intimate with. Meaning that he was practicing what? Homosexuality. So it says, listen to what Abu Bakr did. He gathered the people from the companions of the Prophet ﷺ and consulted them in his had, meaning that which would be the penalty or what would be the punishment as a result of this practice. As Ali ibn Abi Talib from amongst them, he was in them. He was one that was also being consulted of what would be the penalty. He says, فَكَانَ أَشَدَّهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ فِيهِ قَوْلًا, that he had the most severest of statements. He said, verily this act was an act which was practiced by a nation of the nations, which they had done an act which was unprecedented. And you see what Allah had did to them as a result of it. He says, I see that you burn him with fire. فَأَحْرِقْهُ بِالنَّارِ, burn him with fire. So that was one narration upon Ali. Then you have another narration upon Umar al-Khattab. Umar al-Khattab had mentioned and said, whoever does the act of the people of Lut, kill him. And like we talked about, Ya Ma'ashal Ikhwa, these affairs are only for the ruler, for the authorities, not for the common folk. Because if you notice in the narration, it was talking about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and we said what, everyone? He was what? He was the Khalifa. So that means he was the ruler of the country or the land. So all these powers or this jurisdiction is only in the hands of the ruler, not for the common folk. So all these ahkam or these rulings upon a person who practices this act, it all goes back to the what? To the authorities. To the authorities. So these are narrations only for the authorities to practice, not the common folk. And the authorities would take on this affair. If he was in a Muslim land, they would investigate to see whether or not it's been affirmed and established. And if it was, then likewise the penalty would be carried out. But we just given the general narrations to show the severity of what would be the result of one practicing this act. But it is not for the common folk to do this. Again, I'll say it again. If you do this, if you kill someone who's a homosexual, you have fell into being from the Khawarij, who's the dogs of hell. We don't have vigilantism in the religion. There is no vigilantism, or what they call it, being a vigilante, taking the law into his own hands and establishing rulings upon people and killing them, or establishing their own type of justice upon them without it being done in the proper manner and going through the proper channels. There's no vigilantism in Islam, and if it was, that is a form of what they call Kharijiyah, being a Khawarijite, being from the Khawarij, the deviant sect called the Khawarij, who the Prophet ﷺ described them as being the dogs of hell. But we're given a general rulings. It says that some of the Jama'ah, the Sahaba, rahimahullah, and from the Tabi'een, some of them said that the people of Lut, or the people who practice homosexuality, are stoned to death until he dies. It doesn't matter whether you'll find certain narrations upon the Sahaba. It doesn't matter whether he was married before or not married. Ahsana am lam yuhsin. Doesn't matter that he was married previously or he was not. That's some of the narrations upon the Sahaba. Then you have another narration upon the Sahaba, upon Ibn Abbas. It was asked about a Luti, the one who practiced the act of the people of Lut. What is his punishment? What is his penalty? ما حده؟ قال ينظر أعلى بناء في المدينة فيرمى به منكسا ثم يتبع بالحجارة. Ibn Abbas said in the narration, he said that he's raised on the highest structure in the city, and he is dropped upside down, and then it's followed up with rocks. Why Ibn Abbas say this? He's doing it exactly of how Allah punished the people of Lut from before. Allah took them, raised them up to the highest heaven, and dropped them down. And then also stones of clay was rained upon them. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? وَلَوْ كَانْ أَحَدًا يَنْبَغِي أَنْ يُرْجَمْ مَرَّتَيْنِ لَكَانَ. Now listen to one statement upon the great Imam, the Tabi'i, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. قال لو كان أحدا ينبغي له أن يرجم مرتين لكان ينبغي للوط أن يرجم مرتين. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i said, if it was anyone who was befitting for him that he be stoned twice, he said it would be more befitting that the one practicing homosexuality be stoned twice. وعن الزهري في اللوط يرجم أحصن أو لم يحسن سنة ماضية. He says upon Zuhri and the Luti, he said that he's stoned. Doesn't matter whether he's a person that was married before, or he was not, never been married, he's never been married, or he has been married, or he is married. So it doesn't make a difference. That's a sunnah that goes forth, meaning that he's stoned. He says, عن جابر بن زيد, the great Imam, Jabir bin Zayd, and a man غشي رجلا في دبره قال الدبر أعظم حرمة من الفرج يرجم أحسن أم أو لم يحسن. Jabir bin Zayd, he said that he came to him, there was a man that had been intimate with another man in his anus. And he said the anus is more greater in its severity as far as its hurma, as far as in its sanctuary, meaning of the bounds of how great it was, than just being a person who's a fornicator, meaning just in the private part that's not lawful for a person. He said that, if being that the case, that's more severe, they are stoned. It doesn't matter whether they were not married or whether they were married. So and then we have more narrations upon the Salaf. So we had the Sahaba, then we had the Tabi'een who took knowledge from them and how they understood it. So all this, brothers and sisters, is to let us know, because some of the people will try to argue, oh, that was only for back then. That's not for now. And we know that the victory of what will allow us to survive in the hereafter is based upon how we understand the religion in accordance to how the companions understood it and how they practice it to the best of our ability. You'll find that the Sahaba understood that these actions, after the ayats of Lut that it came down, you will find none of the companions saying, for example, that these ayats or that was only for the people of Lut. That's not for these days. That's not what the Sahaba said. The Sahaba practiced it, and they understood it that still, if a person was to do this act, they would still be what? Punished. If the ruler or the leader found that there was one practicing it. And we have the authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which we'll discuss later. So no one could try to say now, oh, that was just for back then. That's not for now. Rather, you'll find, like we said, of even a great ai''imah, and this one who's still alive, may Allah preserve him, is the great Imam Sheikh Salih Fawzan. Where he even mentioned and said, أن الإتيان في الدبر وكذلك الأمراض التناسلية الجنسية. He says, يسبب الأمراض الفتاكة واللواط سبب للأمراض الفتاكة ومصداق ذلك ما حدث في هذا الزمان من مرض الإيدز الذي روع العالم هو بسبب اللواط وبسبب الزنا بسبب إتيان النساء غير المحافظات على فروجهن واختلاط المياه واختلاط الرجال على هذه المرأة يسبب المرض. He said that being intimate in the anus, it causes dangerous diseases and sicknesses. And also likewise, the sexual transmitted diseases of these days. He says that homosexuality was a reason for dangerous diseases. He says, and the confirmation of that is what has taken place in these days, of the sickness of AIDS, which has shook and rocked the world, the whole world, because of homosexuality, and because of fornication and adultery, and because of coming to women who are not protecting their chastity for their husbands, and also sperm being mixed. واختلاط الرجال, meaning the sperm of men being mixed with other men. And how many times do we know we heard of women, from the non-Muslim women, and we ask Allah that it not be our Muslim women doing this, you'll find that women being intimate with more than one man in 1 week, and finding different sperms were deposited inside of her. All of those are reasons for sexual transmitted diseases, as I talked about before. When another man's sperm mixes with another man's sperm, it is a reason now for a transmitted or a sexual transmitted disease. Now it comes as a result of that. So the mixing of sperm and the mixing of men being intimate with men with the same gender in the anus, and likewise with women in the anus, and also different men being intimate, all these things that we see that the non-Muslims indulge in. These are the reasons for what? For these transmittive or these sexual transmitted diseases that have now been what? As a result of the people's actions. And because of the fornication, and because of the adultery, and because of all of these affairs, which as a result of it, like we said, has destroyed society and made these sicknesses be widespread amongst the societies and the people all over the world. And the people have to take in considerations because of their actions, because of what these type of acts, what they bring of no benefit. He says, so ashaddu minhu, what is the most severest of them is homosexuality. Because it's a place of disgust, and it's a place of fuhsh, of abomination. And Allah is all wise and all knowledgeable, in which He has made unlawful from these affairs that will cause serious harm. So Allah Ta'ala has condemned this when He says that Allah will not look to him on the day of resurrection, meaning that Allah Ta'ala will be angry with him, and He will not look to him in a look of mercy, meaning Allah Ta'ala will be angry with him. Sorry. So Allah not looking to him is a dalil, is an evidence and proof that it's a major sin. Like we said, of being intimate in this manner is a major sin. And Allah Ta'ala says in His book, Surah Al-Imran, verily those, and this is just showing the example, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَشْتَرُونَ بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ وَأَيْمَانِهِمْ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا أُولَٰئِكَ لَا خَلَاقَ لَهُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ وَلَا يُكَلِّمُهُمُ اللَّهُ وَلَا يَنظُرُ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَا يُزَكِّيهِمْ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Verily those who purchase by the covenant of Allah, He says a cheap price, or they purchase by the covenant of Allah, by using a cheap price, meaning by them swearing and taking oaths that are what? That are weak or they're lying, and they're using that in order to sell for a cheap price, for something lowly. He says, verily they are the ones who will not have any portion of the hereafter, and Allah will not speak to them, and He will not look to them. That's the point of reference in the ayah, is when He said that He will not look to them. Meaning that Allah Ta'ala will not look to them and He will be angry with them, which is an indication of how severe this thing or this affair is. It's from the major sins. So it's upon a person to stay away from it, and upon one who fell into it to make tawbah to Allah, and to return back to Allah, and to stay away from this crime. And if he was in a Muslim land, and if he was in amongst an established rulership, that is a Muslim jurisdiction or Islamic jurisdiction, when he was in a Muslim country where the one who's dominant is a Muslim ruler, and it's been established, and if he does this, then he will be what? He will be punished. Now, a question might ask, does this now, if a man does this to his wife, does it invalidate the marriage? We say no. It does not invalidate it. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? It does not invalidate the marriage. Is the sisters with me? Oh, okay. It does not invalidate the marriage. If he's married, of course, or he or she is married. If he or she is married and they fall and they do this, it does not invalidate the marriage. But however, and like he said, and Shaykh al-Islam even mentioned this. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah had mentioned about this regard, that if he persists, then they are separated. They are separated. But in the instance, like I said, if it does take place, it does not invalidate it, but he would be commanded to make tawbah. And if he persists, like we said, then they would be commanded to separate between them. But it does not invalidate the marriage. But if the person that's been established amongst the ruler, and he finds out and it reaches the authorities, then they will carry out a punishment. طيب. What time is it? It's 5:10 already. Wow. Oh, well. About 5 more minutes. طيب. The next hadith of the Prophet, the next hadith in the chapter. طيب. I'm sorry, everyone. Before we move on to the next hadith, notice it says in the narration, if you look in your book, what does it say, everyone? It says this narration, u'illa bil waqf. U'illa bil waqf. You said that this narration has a hidden weakness, that it's mawquf. Mawquf. What's mawquf? Mawquf means a statement of a companion. Mawquf. Marfu' means that it's a hadith, it's a statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maqtu' means a statement of a tabi'i, meaning the student of a sahabi, the student of a companion. So you have firstly marfu', we're talking about in terms of science of hadith. Marfu' means it's a hadith. Mawquf means it's a statement of a sahabi, of a companion. Maqtu' is that it's a statement of a tabi'i. What does it say in your book, everyone? It says that it's u'illah has a hidden weakness of waqf. It's mawquf. You'll find that the scholars of hadith, like we said, the great Imam Muhammad Nasruddin al-Albani said, firstly, the hadith is marfu'. All these narrations are raised to the level of it being marfu'. That's number one. He said, because you'll find that a lot of the hidden weaknesses that are in these narrations are all light weaknesses. They're not severe weaknesses. They're light weaknesses, which they can be combined to be raised to the level of it being hasan. Raised to the level of it being what? Sound in its chain. So that's number one. He said number two, let's just say for argument's sake, that it is mawquf, that it's not marfu'. It's mawquf, it's a statement of sahabi. He said it still takes the hukm of a hadith. Why? Because we know in the science of hadith that if you look to the narration, what does it say? That Allah will not look to him. So that's an affair of what, everyone? The unseen. That's an affair of the unseen. So basically they're saying the hidden weakness is that this is not a statement of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a statement of a sahabi. It's a statement of a sahabi. It's a statement of a companion. So you can't say it's a statement of the Prophet ﷺ. Firstly, we said that's nullified. If you look and study the science of hadith, all of them, like we said, number one is authentic. Number two, he says also, let's just say it is mawquf. Let's just say it is a statement of a sahabi. He says still the hadith takes the hukm of, the statement of sahabi here takes the statement of a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because the statement here, they try to say it's upon Ibn Abbas. If you notice in your books, what does it say? The second one, it's upon Ibn Abbas. We know that affairs of the unseen, if you find that a sahabi or companion of the Prophet ﷺ makes a statement pertaining to the affairs of the unseen, it takes the ruling of a hadith. Why? Because none of the Sahaba would talk about the affairs of the unseen from their own opinion. It's not permissible. And they knew that. So if they spoke about the affair of the unseen, know for sure they heard it from the Prophet ﷺ, and that understanding has been established because they took it directly from the Messenger of Allah. So that reason you'll find it takes a ruling of a hadith. So let's just say that this narration is mawquf. It still takes the hukm of a what? Hadith. Because you'll find in the science of hadith that they say about narrations of the unseen, la majala lirra'i fi, falahu hukm al-rafa'. He said there's no room for one to give his own opinion or ijtihad in the affairs of the unseen. It's not permissible. No one can give their own opinion or their own judgment pertaining to the affairs of the unseen. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? This narration here is of Ibn Abbas. What does it say in your book? That Allah will not look to him. Isn't that affair of the unseen or not? It is affair of the unseen. So even let's just say it is mawquf, it still is marfu'. Why? Because he said a statement of the unseen, which is not permissible for anyone to give their own opinion in or own judgment in, And for that reason, Ibn Abbas took it from the Prophet ﷺ directly, so the meaning has been established, and this hukm has been established, so the hadith still takes a what? Or this statement of the Sahaba takes the statement of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? You'll find that in any statement of any Sahabi, if any Sahabi is making a statement of the affair of the unseen, and it's been authentically reported upon that Sahabi, that hadith takes takes the ruling of it being marfu' or having rafa', meaning it takes the ruling of a hadith. Because none of the Sahaba will ever talk about the affairs of the unseen from their own opinion. We'll stop here, inshallah. We gotta get ready for next class already. Wow. What's it? Maghrib comes in about 6:13 or something like that. Wow. Time. Where's time? Where's time? The day is basically almost over. طيب. Any questions about the lesson? Was the lesson clear or was it unclear? طيب هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.